Hello everybody. In today's video, it is currently Friday, April 10th, 2026 at 4:33 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or Eastern Daylight Time, excuse me. Today we are going to be going over the Storm Prediction Center's Day 2, Day 3, and Days 4 through 8 on their categorical outlook scale. Excuse me, starting off with a bang, wonderful. So for context, I'm going to say this every video, but for context, the Storm Prediction Center is an affiliate of the National Weather Service, and the Storm Prediction Center, their name is kind of self-explanatory. They predict storms. They're the center of predicting storms for the contiguous United States, all 48 states. All 48 states. And I say 48 because it excludes Alaska and Hawaii. So they are not a part of the contiguous United States, but um, you know, uh, what's displayed on screen here, this is the contiguous United States. Currently, weirdly enough, there are 4 marginal risks of severe weather. One for the plains into the western Mississippi Valley, from Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, and Colorado. That's one marginal risk. Another marginal risk is from Nevada all the way up to southeastern Oregon and southwestern Iowa. Another marginal risk is in the Californian mountains, and the final marginal risk is off the near the Oregonian coast, probably in another mountain range. I think, if I can remember my mountain ranges, I don't really know. But I'm not going to go over the 4 marginal risks because look at this. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, there are risks for severe weather. And Saturday and Sunday are days 2 and 3, so they get updated, excuse me, they get updated twice per day, which is actually really good. I understand why days 4 through 8 are only updated usually once per day, and that would be in the morning. We're still going to go over that, but days 2 and 3 will have some extra refinements because their risk outlook is updated twice per day. So without further ado, let's dive straight into it. So this is Saturday severe weather. I discussed this for like 4 videos already, so if y'all don't know that there is severe weather, then, just be glad you're watching this video and just don't be as oblivious as you are right now. I mean, not gonna lie, it is okay to be oblivious, but there has to be an extent, there has to be a point where obliviousness can't be good. But anyway, I digress. So here we go. So we have severe weather in place. We have a slight risk, level 2 out of 5 risk. If you don't know what the risk levels are, watch like 2-3 videos ago. There's a level 2 out of 5, 2 slight risk of severe weather that encompasses kind of West Texas into the kind of Texas Panhandle, the southern Texas Panhandle, and southeastern New Mexico. So some populated areas, some centers that are in this slight risk include Lubbock, Midland, Fort Stockton, Odessa, San Angelo, and Clovis, New Mexico. Now, I'm extrapolating cities from putting on cities, cities up here, and also looking at this below the outlook, some larger population centers in the risk area. So again, we have Lubbock, Midland, Odessa, Fort Stockton, San Angelo, and Clovis, New Mexico in the slight risk of severe weather for tomorrow. We also have a marginal risk that extends from the Mexico border all the way up to the kind of La Crosse area around there. La Crosse is up there somewhere. So the marginal goes all the way, like I said earlier, from the Mexico border all the way up to Wisconsin, near La Crosse. So that's wonderful. Also, there is a marginal risk in Central California, but I'm not going to get into that because it's not relevant with the severe weather. It's Californian weather and whatever weather they have. Wonderful. Plus, it's not the primary risk. It's just a random marginal. Anyway, so here we go. So the tornado outlook. Now I selected tornadoes, and you can see there's a 2% risk of tornadoes that jets off from the Mexico border into Texas, into a very small bit of Oklahoma, extreme southwestern Oklahoma, near Altus and Lawton, Oklahoma, and Walters, Oklahoma. And then we have another risk. So this was the first tornado risk I'm talking about, and then this is another tornado risk that is taking up the Omaha metro, uh, southeast Nebraska, southwest Iowa, extreme northwest Missouri, and northern and kind of northeastern Kansas, not including the Kansas City metropolitan area. So that's the tornado risk. There's a 2% tornado risk, which means that for any supercell that is within this range, within 25 miles of a given point, there is a 2% risk of a tornado spawning. Now you may be sorry, I've been coughing a lot because not only am I talking a lot, allergies. So you just have to kind of bear with me. I do apologize. If you want to lower your volume, you always can. So sorry for headphone users if you're listening with headphones. But anyway, like I was saying earlier, for every supercell, within these green areas, within 25 miles of a given point, there's a 2% chance of a tornado spawning. Now, you may be thinking, oh, well, 2% doesn't seem that bad. Well, you have to account also how many supercells are spawning because you have to use probability and statistics. And let's say there's 40 supercells. If there's a 2% chance of a supercell, statistically, if there's a 2% chance of a supercell producing a tornado, and you have 40 supercells, there's an 80% chance you get a tornado. Now, am I saying that the math that I just said was right? No. I mean, you got to take that up with the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma. So, I mean, I'm kind of just yapping a little bit. I mean, I really don't understand all of what the Storm Prediction Center does and how their mathematical and algorithmic formulas kind of interplay with everything. So I'm just like, yeah, so cool. But anyway, so like I said, 2% risk of tornadoes from the Mexico border into Texas into Oklahoma, and then one for Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, and Missouri. Let's go over to the wind risk. The wind risk is, it looks exactly like the slight risk. It's basically the same thing. There's a 15% wind risk from the Mexico border into West Texas, into the southern Texas Panhandle, into southeastern New Mexico, which means that there's a 15% chance that a wind event will occur from any given thunderstorm or supercell. And then the hail risk is, kind of like it's basically the same thing, except the marginal risk also includes that jettisoning portion of the marginal risk from the Texas Panhandle into Oklahoma, into Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, a little bit of South Dakota, a little bit of Minnesota, and a little bit of Wisconsin as well. So it kind of just it includes that jettisoning part northeastward, so that's cool. So wind, hail, and a couple of tornadoes are expected in the slight risk. Uh, I'm thinking based off of uh, what's being prognosticated at this very moment that tornadoes are not going to occur as frequently in southeastern New Mexico as they will in southern and western and the Texan Panhandle. As those aforementioned regions, they will have potentially higher probabilities. Now, am I saying that the Storm Prediction Center is correct? They may be. I mean, yes, they have many years of experience and they probably are correct. However, there's like a blend of tornadic percentages and percentiles. So it's kind of like you can't really put a defined line because there's thermodynamic spread. The thermodynamics can spread, and remember, they're being lifted northward, and so obviously, yes, thermodynamics do advect northward with dew point advection and wind shear and the overlapping short wave and whatever. And yes, they sometimes do intersperse favorably, and sometimes they don't, which is why there are lesser severe weather risks. And it's clear that the Storm Prediction Center thinks that the biggest risk is in Texas and New Mexico. However, if you just look, there's no tornado risk for New Mexico, but there is a wind and hail risk for New Mexico. So that's just basically what's being prognosticated, and what I'm trying to tell you is that there may not be as many tornadoes in New Mexico as there is in Southwest Texas. Alright, so let me stop yapping, let me shut up, and let me read the description. So, we're not really going to read these last two paragraphs, Central California and the Great Basin vicinity. We're not going to read those. We're just going to read synopsis, Southern High Plains, Central Plains to the Upper Midwest, and Iowa into Southern Minnesota. So, without further ado, let's do this. We're not going to really read the summary. We're just going to, because who cares about summarization sometimes? We really got to get into the nitty-gritty, and you have to understand things sometimes. Synopsis: a mid-level ridge across the plains will move east through the day on Saturday with a strong mid-level trough approaching the California coast. In between these two features, a mid-level shortwave will move from the Great Basin to the northern plains. Lee surface troughing will develop across the Front Range. The resulting strengthening low-level southerly flow will bring moisture northward across the plains. Southern High Plains. Moderate instability is forecast to develop by early afternoon across West Texas and into eastern New Mexico. Weak inhibition should allow for widespread thunderstorm development by early to mid-afternoon. Relatively weak shear, especially early on, will likely result in somewhat nebulous organization and storm mergers, which may preclude individual updraft longevity and strength. However, thunderstorms are expected to congeal by late afternoon and may result in some more organized wind threats, supporting into the overnight period as the low-level jet strengthens. Central Plains into the upper Midwest. Weak height falls are expected to overspread the Central Plains through the day on Saturday. As this occurs, isolated to potentially scattered thunderstorms are expected along and near the diffuse dry line. Shear will remain somewhat weak across this region, and therefore, some hail and wind threat is possible, but a greater threat is not anticipated. Guidance shows a small jet streak ejecting across central Kansas during the day Saturday. This may provide a slightly more favorable zone of shear across central Kansas and southeast Nebraska Saturday afternoon and into the evening. Forecast soundings show an uncapped environment, but without an initiating boundary. Storm development remains uncertain. Any mesoscale lift associated with this mid-level jet streak could result in an isolated supercell during the afternoon and evening, but this scenario remains conditional. And then finally, Iowa into southern Minnesota. As the low-level jet strengthens Saturday night, isentropic ascent will increase and thunderstorms will develop across the upper Midwest. Some 12Z convective allowing model guidance has hinted at some additional elevated thunderstorms across northern Iowa and southern Minnesota in the wake of the primary zone of ascent. This is likely associated with the same jet streak moving across Kansas during the day. If storms develop within this zone, forecast soundings support some large hail threat. Therefore, the marginal risk has been expanded to cover this threat. Alrighty, so cool. California and the Great Basin vicinity, not really that relevant as there's just going to be a 5% wind threat, which won't really do much. Alrighty, so that was the day 2. Now let's get into the day 3. So the day 3 is a pretty slim slight risk. However, there is a 15% and 5% stippled or hatched region, which means that the Storm Prediction Center is forecasting some pretty severe weather events, whether it be a severe tornado, very destructive damaging winds, or very destructive hail. Who knows? Nobody really does. Excuse me. However, the slight risk extends from south central Texas into central Texas into north central Texas into central and western Oklahoma, not including the Oklahoman Panhandle, and into southern south central Kansas. And yes, again, if we look at the probabilistic instead of the categorical, we have a stippled or hatched region of severe weather. So Some cities in these risk areas, specifically let's go with the stippled risk. Some uh, cities in the stippled risk include Woodward, Oklahoma, Midland, Texas, Abilene, Texas, uh, Lawton, Oklahoma, and Odessa, Texas. And then some cities that are in the uh, slight risk that are not in the stippled region include Wichita, Oklahoma City, Wichita Falls, uh, Norman, Abilene, which I just said. So we're not going to say that. All right, and in the 5% risk of conditional, probabilistic, whatever severe weather, there are Dallas, Austin, Fort Worth, Kansas City, Missouri, Omaha, Nebraska. Uh, we have Waco, Corpus Christi, Brownsville, Shreveport, Tulsa, uh, Kansas City, Kansas, Lincoln, Omaha, Des Moines, Minneapolis, and La Crosse it's on the crosshairs of being inside the marginal risk. So cool. Very wonderful. So that is that. Let's read the description. Synopsis. On Sunday, a ridge will become established across the eastern contiguous United States with a trough advancing slowly inland across the west. A weak mid-level shortwave trough will move from the Central Plains to the Great Lakes during the period. Persistent mid-level flow across the Rockies will continue lee troughing and northward moisture transport across the plains. Central and Southern Plains. A large area of precipitation is expected to be ongoing Sunday morning from central Oklahoma to central Texas. This is expected to move slowly northeast through the day. Subsidence in the wake of the morning shortwave trough associated with this activity should allow for recovery ahead of the dry line from West Texas to central Kansas. In addition, southwesterly to west-southwesterly flow aloft and a well-established elevated mixed layer should assist in erosion of cloud cover across this region by late morning. Therefore, by late Sunday afternoon, moderate to strong instability is forecast to develop ahead of the dry line. Forcing across the warm sector remains weak and casts considerable conditionality to the forecast. Guidance shows mostly neutral heights across the dry line during the day. In addition, the dry line remains relatively diffuse, which would not support the strong convergent circulations necessary for convective initiation. However, it is worth noting that much of the guidance has a dry line orientation oriented somewhat northeast to southwest. Therefore, any convection which does develop within this zone may have a long enough residence time to mature before moving off of the dry line. Given the expectation for minimal inhibition during the afternoon, this may favor storm development along particular mesoscale corridors along the dry line Sunday afternoon and early evening in an otherwise weakly forced environment. Given the moderate to potentially strong instability and moderate shear, large hail, including the potential for 2+ inches hail in diameter, will likely be the primary hazard with any supercells that develop. And we get 3 more paragraphs. Cool. So Central and South Texas. 12Z guidance is fairly consistent with the depiction of a mid-level shortwave trough moving across northern Mexico during the day Sunday. Given the strong instability across northern Mexico and South Texas, it would seem likely for storms to develop along the higher terrain of northern Mexico during the afternoon and evening ahead of this trough. Strong instability downstream could maintain these storms through the evening with some potential for upscale growth, such as shown by the rapid refresh forecast system. However, significant inhibition on forecast soundings and minimal quantitative precipitation forecast signals from the global guidance, combined with minimal convection over the higher terrain in Mexico from the other convective allowing model guidance out through 0Z, casts some doubt on this scenario. An additional scenario is possible across central Texas. At the southern end of the morning convection, continued storm development is possible within a supercellular environment. This scenario God, what am I doing? This scenario is less certain given rising heights aloft and will likely be dictated by the character of the cold pool from Saturday night and Sunday morning storms. However, this is a scenario depicted by some guidance, most notably the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts, which could have a locally higher severe weather threat across this region on Sunday afternoon. Upper Midwest. A conditional supercell environment will also exist across the upper Midwest ahead of a surface low, though severe risk will depend on timing of the mid-level shortwave trough. Uncertainties regarding storm coverage remain, but will maintain the marginal risk and trends will be monitored. So the severe weather will be expanding a little bit and will be progressing eastward. So will not include southwestern Texas really much anymore. So it's now just central, south central, north central Texas into central and western Oklahoma, not including the Oklahoman Panhandle and the south central part of Kansas. So the day 4 through 8 outlook. This is where it gets pretty scary because the further you go in time, the worse things get. So I'm just going to play this GIF, whatever you want to call it. So day 4 is Monday, day 5 is Tuesday, day 6 Wednesday, day 7 Thursday, day 8 Friday. So there is no prognosticated severe weather as of lately. There's no prognosticated delineated severe weather for Thursday and Friday. However, the Storm Prediction Center has alluded that severe weather will likely be probable on Thursday and maybe into Friday. I don't remember reading the words. I mean, I do remember reading the description. I just don't remember what it is because I was busy with school and everything and I got sidetracked. So anyway, let's stop this. So this is day 4. This is Monday severe risk. So Monday severe risk is a 15% risk of severe weather, which, if you don't know, is a slight risk equivalent of severe weather. It's just that the Storm Prediction Center, due to many modular uncertainties, do not issue the categorical risk outlooks. They just issue a 15% risk delineation or a 30% risk delineation, and that correlates with a slight risk or an enhanced risk. However, if you transition into day 3 and account for the probabilistic to intensity new guidance update in early March of this year, it'll probably be different. So just keep that in mind. Sorry sorry if I'm making things complicated. It's just that severe weather prognosticating is very complicated. And oh boy, am I in for a treat when I go to college. But anyway, I digress. I've said that like 8 times today. So here we go. So this slight risk equivalent, 15% risk delineation, starts in Texas, central and northern Texas, into central Oklahoma, into eastern and east central Kansas, into the northwestern corridor of Missouri, into the eastern part of Nebraska, a very small sliver of southeastern South Dakota, into most of Iowa, not including the extreme eastern part like Dubuque and Clinton. Actually, Dubuque may be in this risk, but I know Clinton, Iowa is not in this risk as of lately. The southern part of Minnesota and the southwestern part of Wisconsin, including La Crosse. So the severe weather continues and grows expansively. Day 5 is where it gets extremely scary. Day 5, when I saw this at like 5:30 in the morning, just waking up all groggy, I looked at the risk delineation and I was completely blown away because the trends had an uptick, so far. So here's day 5, day 4, day 5, day 4, day 5. Notice how day 5 is fat. Not trying to discriminate or anything, but notice how it is fat. It is huge. It covers 421,858 square miles of land and water because Lake Michigan is included in this. Also, I believe Lake Superior, if I'm getting that lake correct, either Lake Superior or Lake Huron, the lake on the other side of Michigan. Not the Detroit side of Michigan, not the Chicago quote-unquote side of Michigan, but the Detroit side of Michigan. That there's a small, very small sliver of that also included in this risk of severe weather. Like I said, this risk is fat as heck. Literally, it is huge. You could fit Iowa and Illinois, probably both in the risk. Anyway, again, we have essentially the same starting point. So this is day 4 and this is day 5. Severe weather starts. I shouldn't say starts, it's just I'm going from south to north. So severe weather starts in central and northern Texas, especially north central Texas, into the central and eastern parts of Oklahoma, into eastern Kansas, into northwest Arkansas. A small sliver of northwest Arkansas is located in this, into central, northern, and western Missouri, into a sliver of southeastern Nebraska. Omaha may be on the cusp of being in this. Almost all of Iowa, except for the northwest portion. Southeast Minnesota, central and southern Wisconsin, central, western, and northern Illinois, into central, southern, and western Michigan, into central and northern Indiana and northwest Ohio. That is a lot. A big, 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 absolutely tremendous risk of severe weather. This has blown up. It is again thick. It is fat. Again, not trying to discriminate any severe weather risks, but it really is something impressive. And then we have day 6. So day 6 is kind of like day 5 in regards to that it is kind of fat, but severe weather has downtrended a little bit, specifically for this. Well, I shouldn't say downtrended, it's just that the risk delineation area was refined. So we have central and northern Texas into central and eastern Oklahoma into northwest Arkansas, eastern Kansas, almost all of Missouri, except for the little boot heel, almost all of Illinois, including the Chicago Metro, or excluding the Chicago Metro and the, kind of near Evansville area. There's a very small sliver of western Indiana, a very small sliver of southeast Nebraska, and southern and eastern Iowa is included in this. So that's day 6. That's Wednesday. This is day 5. This is Tuesday. And this is day 4. And this is Monday. Day 4, day 5, day 6, day 5, day 4, day 5, day 6. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. If you're in any of those severe weather zones, you have got to be prepared. You have got to be prepared for severe weather. Now, the Storm Prediction Center has insinuated that tornadoes are going to be likely. However, we don't know the probabilities just yet. It's way too far out in time to know and understand these things. So we just have to wait. We have to wait for just a couple of days, and then new details will start to surface, start to emanate, start to come to fruition, and then we'll be able to be happy and satisfied and see what the heck is going on. Anyway, let's read the description. So, days 4 through 6, Monday through Wednesday, Central and Southern Plains to the Midwest. There is quite a bit of uncertainty regarding severe potential and evolution during the Monday through Wednesday period. An upper trough will slowly pivot across the west on Monday and emerge over the central and southern Rockies by early Wednesday before finally ejecting across the plains and toward the mid to upper Mississippi Valley on Wednesday. During this time period, broad southwesterly deep layer flow will overspread the plains into the mid to upper Mississippi Valley. On Monday, a surface low will develop over the northern and central plains with a dry line extending southward across Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, and a warm front extending across southern Minnesota into Wisconsin. Several lead shortwave impulses will move across the plains, though height tendencies will remain mostly neutral. Nevertheless, cooling aloft will support steep mid-level lapse rates and increasing boundary layer moisture, surface dew points in the low to mid-60s, will support moderate to strong destabilization. During the evening, a southwesterly low-level jet will increase across the plains, overspreading the surface dry line. Vertically veering wind profiles in 30 to 40 knots of effective shear magnitudes would support supercells capable of all hazards meaning uh, wind, hail, lightning, and potential tornadoes, though storm coverage remains uncertain. By Tuesday, this is day 6, this is that fat severe risk, the GFS or Global Forecast System becomes more progressive with the Western Trough, ejecting it into the plains by early Wednesday, whereas the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasts hangs the trough back west and is slower. Nevertheless, a similar air mass will be in place across the warm sector, east of a dry line across the plains, and to the south of a warm front draped across the Great Lakes. Isolated convection may develop along the dry line across the plains, posing a supercell/all hazards risk. Higher storm coverage appears more likely across portions of the mid to upper Mississippi Valley and Great Lakes vicinity closer to a surface level. That that one sentence alone is scary. Like yesterday, the Storm Prediction Center alluded to a potential higher categorical risk upgrade, an upgrade to a higher risk, like a 30% risk delineation. That's what they alluded to yesterday. And now they've alluded to it again today. Now, obviously, there's still uncertainty interspersed within the whole entire equation here. So that's why they didn't necessarily jump the gun and upgrade it, because they just don't want to jump to conclusions. Everything can change. Things are wibbly wobbly and everything else. On Wednesday, this is day 6, so the still fat-ish risk. On Wednesday, the upper trough should progress from the plains to the Great Lakes while weakening. A surface cold front will develop southeast across portions of the central United States, and some severe risk should persist along and ahead of this boundary. How convection evolves on Tuesday into Wednesday will impact where the greatest severe risk will develop, but at least some risk should exist from portions of the southern plains to the mid-Mississippi Valley. And then days 7 through 8, Thursday through Friday. So severe weather is not delineated Thursday and Friday. I should say for Thursday and Friday because of uncertainty, plus the severe weather risk is subdued. Predictability is low heading into the end of the forecast period on Thursday and Friday, as large spread exists among medium-range guidance. However, western United States upper troughing may persist, suggesting some severe thunderstorm potential could persist for parts of the plains late in the work week. That's really it. So yeah, remember, this is Monday, this is Tuesday, this is Wednesday. Also, this is Sunday, and this is tomorrow's risk, Saturday. If you live in any of those areas that I just showed, you could rewind a little bit. If you live in those areas, especially those yellow areas that I just showed, please start to prepare, start to think about what you're doing, where you're going, who you're going to be meeting up with, and think about the structure in which you'll be in. Think about if it has a basement, if it has a storm shelter, if it has some type of shelter, if it has bathrooms, and also think about where you live and in proximity to like your cardinal directions, northeast, southwest. You have to think about all of this because if an emergency situation comes, God forbid a massive tornado randomly spawns out of nowhere, you gotta understand where you need to go, what you need to do, and how you need to do it. So please, I'm not saying that this is going to be an apocalyptic scenario. Knock on wood. There's no wood around me, so I'll knock on my leg. Uh, God forbid there is an apocalyptic thing. You should still know what to do. You should know what to do even if there's not an apocalyptic thing. You should still, you know, still repeatedly do it even if there's no severe weather event so that it's kind of like muscle memory, you know what I mean? Anyway, so that really is it for today. My severe weather broadcasting has now officially terminated, and I will see you all in the next one, hopefully. I know that Saturday there's going to be some more crucial updates, so hopefully everything will be okay. Hopefully the trends will stabilize, and hopefully severe weather is, not going to be the most horrible thing in the world. Alrighty, have a great one.